don't know. Usually it is.
You're gonna have to go into the settings and select it back to that.
There we go. She's presenting now, so it must be on.
It's not showing the owl though. It's. I don't know how to do this. I don't do this. Usually it's set up. It's Andy's fault.
It's my bad. Just kidding.
Isn't it the in-person attendees on our screens?
Yeah,
Yeah,
but like
but-
the owl usually has like little 3 segments, because it'll like.
There's the
pan.
panoramic.
Yeah,
and
it's
then-
just the computer, it's not the owl.
Oh, there it is.
Oh, yeah.
Have you started recording, Lisa? Okay. All right. I'll call the December 18th, 2023 Redmond School Board Workshop to order. All members are present. Board member bucket is virtual, so all votes tonight will be by roll call vote. It's a workshop where we just discuss things and then bring them forward to another meeting at the school board. So please join me for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I also forgot to mention that our superintendent, Tina Wagner, is with us also, an important part of our team. So apologize for that. First topic is site logic. Is that correct?
Correct.
And I'll turn it over to Superintendent Wagner.
So we'll let Andy do his PowerPoint.
Hit present now. Is that kind of how it goes, or let's see here.
Yeah, these are the-
I don't think he's on for now. Oh, Marty's on. As he's doing that, I was able to meet with Andy a few weeks ago, about 3 weeks ago, just to talk about the requested feasibility study, and so we did a pretty comprehensive overview, so it's probably 11 hours. And I invited him because it's like a lot of other opportunities around the lead export that could actually turn out.
All right. Might need a little direction on how I share the screen here. Thank you.
I'm sure a lot of people want to know what one of this stuff is. I don't.
No.
Great. So
Right there, Mr. Armstead?
Nope, we're the old people here, so we don't know it.
I have to do the entire screen.
Oh, it's still.
What's it doing?
That's the strike can. That's a zero.
Live narration.
You're presenting that room there.
It's on our screen.
It's on your screen?
Master facility planning.
Yep. It's coming in.
There we go. Okay. Great. Thank you very much. Well, good evening. I'm Andy Fields. I work for a company called SiteLogic, and tonight we have about 30 minutes. There's a lot of information that I'm going to share, and I want to make sure that you're hearing what you want to hear tonight or what you're hoping to hear. So even before I get into our agenda, I guess maybe just some information from the school board, what you're hoping to hear or learn tonight.
Is this open? Oh, I'll start. Yeah, I'm interested in if you had any suggestions how we can get back to grade level centers that I think we or the public have been looking at, primarily moving 5th grade back to an elementary setting and 8th grade back to a middle school. And then I'm personally interested in maybe what Martina hit on a little bit, maybe looking at what it would take to do a study to look at our enrollment and students who are unenrolling and how to capture them, what those reasons for unenrolling, going elsewhere, how we can recruit students from other districts. As we are short $1 million from declining enrollment.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think that moving fifth grade back to elementary, eighth grade to middle school, and then Jefferson School is not being used. And so it seems like a waste for it to just be sitting empty. So if there's a way that we can utilize it in a way that makes sense, that would be great. Or if that's not going to be something that makes sense, that then we no longer have that, just try to make smart decisions about what the future is looking like for the district and what the most logical use of all of the different spaces that we have is.
Anybody else?
I think the other thing that has come up when we talked about this is some of our sites are bursting at the seams. So constantly about while we have kind of steady enrollment or declining enrollment, that infrastructure work and then the programmatic pieces. The one thing that Andy's background is he's a former school administrator, so he's actually working alongside many MBAs and then capitalizing on understanding how program fits facilities is not just body count and rooms are not so, but other infrastructure pieces and then understanding what we navigate every day as administrators.
I think some of the things I brought up on Ms. Osmond and Ms. Scholtel are very good. They're what we've been talking about for some time. We've sold Jefferson School twice, and we still have it. So people are tired of hearing me say that, but that's true. And either we utilize it or do something else, or somebody else do something else with it. So those are some things. Other than the other thing that just kind of came up over the weekend was, I don't know if it's, you probably dive into community ed, and I'm not faulting them, I'm just saying, is there other ways to utilize like the gym space for outside groups? Or how do we get, because we have a tremendous participation in the community through community ed. And it's just robust. I think it does a great job. There's certain things because we can always look at to see if we can continue to do better. Yes.
And just to add, the next thing on our agenda is talking about our unfunded mandates. And I am very concerned about how our future is going to look with those in the picture and keeping all of those things in mind, because we may have needs in the future that we maybe could sort of anticipate, maybe we can't anticipate, but there are things that might be coming down the pipe that we might need to plan for, at least think about, such as, like pre-K, a mandate for pre-K. That's been talked about, it swirls around, but there's nothing that's sticking there. But, then I think, well, if we sub a building, but then that's a mandate in 5 years, where are we done? Because we're pretty stretched for our dollars here.
Yes.
We have a lot of community organizations that are really involved in our schools, and so one thing that's been talked about a little bit is community school model. And so I don't know if that fits in with this, but I think more about that.
Well, I think Cobble Family Center through the RUCFB program is bursting at the seams, and they would love to have wraparound care, and there's no space for it. So I don't know how Jefferson might not fit into that, but that's if we want to capture people. Wouldn't it be great if we could have wraparound care for families, because those that need it would probably take advantage of our preschool program because they could also kind of do. So.
Yeah, I've got all the answers for you tonight.
So Thursday.
Yeah, no.
Report right there.
That's right. No, and I think your board and your leadership team are on the right path. There's a lot of changes in public education, and I wish I could tell you that I have all the right answers. What I feel comfortable saying is that data gives boards the right information to make informed decisions. And ultimately, that's what our company, what I hope to do, is to give you that information. And what I really like hearing is that balance between your space utilization, your financing, where you need to go for future development. Because sometimes school districts go off in one direction and they build a grandiose building and they don't have the operational funds to support it. Or it might be the other way around. You build robust programs, but you can't live those programs out because you don't have the CTE space. So I think being conceptual and getting the data and then making sure that you can make informed decisions is ultimately what we hope to do with any district that we're able to partner with. So we'll do our best to include those items. There is a lot of information. As Superintendent Wagner stated, I spent over 20 years in public education, 6 years as a math teacher in a middle school setting. I then went and was an administrator in the Stillwater Public Schools, serving about 4 years at an elementary school, Lake Elmo. And then I went up to the junior high, and I feel like I paid off any sins during the next 13 years of my career. I did work with Stillwater Public Schools as we transitioned from 7-9 to 6-8 and then 9-12. So working through grade configurations and a lot of changes. So it's something that I'm very comfortable at supporting. And the reason why I'm here is I'm passionate about public education. I think that our company, SiteLogic, is a vision-minded organization that really wants to see schools become better for the kids they serve. So tonight, what we're hoping to accomplish in about 35 slides and very quickly going through them is a little definition of who SiteLogic is, what our typical process and the emphasis on typical within that, and then next steps and questions that you might have. And again, there's a lot of information, and I don't expect, us to be able to get everything that you wanted to hear tonight out. But if you have questions along the way, don't hesitate to ask. You're not going to, interrupt me or I'm not going to get off message if somebody has a question. So feel free to make this your presentation as we go. So SiteLogic is a big organization. We have a lot of different arms. It's a national organization. Here in the Midwest, though, we only focus on pre-K-12 education, and we're in 5 states. And we've done a lot of businesses with school districts, in that 5-state area. Specifically, business has been in Wisconsin, Minnesota, Iowa, Michigan, and Indiana. And we have served several other states in the area. But that's where our niche is. We like to work with K-12 schools. And that's where I think we're well positioned to support school districts like yours. Just to go through some various school districts we've partnered with, you can see on here a couple of things that we cover a pretty wide territory in the Minnesota area, and we cover projects that span in cost. So we really don't have a number that's too small or too big to help support school districts in accomplishing their vision. This was in 2021, and as you look at some of our 2022 numbers, you'll see some other districts that partner in there. What we really like to do is to work with organizations, develop relationships, and then be long-term partners. As you see our model play out, while we're not afraid to do one project at a time, we want to be partners that we do well enough by you that you call us back. And so that's one of our goals. As we look at who SiteLogic is and what distinguishes us from other competitors in the space, we have all of the services needed to help support projects similar to the wide variety of questions that you had today. We have people in our organization that we employ that do all of those services. So we have architects under our roof, we have engineers, project managers, and educational consultants that support you and make sure that you have everything that you need. So in some districts, they might work with educational consultants to help start the process. And then the school district will have to employ architects to come in and render designs. And then those architects will have to find engineers to come and make sure that their designs match the mechanicals in other areas. And then they'd have to bring in a construction management company to manage the project. We have all those services. And it's really peace of mind to work with one entity and not to try to manage multiple. So within that, we also have a lot of other things that we do. Some school districts that choose to go to their taxpayers have community engagement and referendum support. Some communities that don't even go to their taxpayers for a question use our community engagement team to get information from the community members. But we offer a lot of different services, and again, under one roof. So we're going to talk about a typical process. And when I say typical, typical is only as relevant as it is to the school district. Our process has to match and mirror what you're looking for in Red Wing. And so even though we have a really good idea of what's effective and what works well, we really want to tailor it to only and exactly what Red Wing needs. And again, we talked about some of the dangers that we've seen out there in public education, that we go down one path without thinking about a lot of other priorities. As somebody who managed budgets for a long time, especially long-term facility maintenance, early on in my career, I found that my choir teacher and football coach got a lot of those funds because they had the loudest voices. Later on in my career, when I started using data, I started to learn that there's a lot of other things in our building that may take precedence over that. And that's nothing to knock our football coach or our choir teacher, but it's to say that a lot of times people don't understand all the different things that go on in a school that have to be maintained, and that you have such a limited pot to be able to do it with. And so having information and having data is powerful. So we want to make sure that that comes to life for you. And as you can see, our planning process typically starts with physical needs assessment, looking at the conditions of spaces, looking at educational needs, so programming needs that you're hoping to aspire to, and then looking at the functional needs. How do our buildings interact with the community? And we'll give you some examples in each of those areas and how we do that. And again, I want to underscore, while we have a typical process, it is dependent on what it is that Red Wing Schools wants. So when you think about the physical needs of buildings, and you can walk in any building. And as I walked in your main entrance, your administrative entrance, and I saw the eagle and I saw the lockers, and nobody uses lockers anymore, at least at my kids' school. And when I was a principal, kids weren't using lockers, but you have that great space that's right there in the entrance, and it's well maintained. The floors look shiny and polished, but we need to dig deeper than that. Things that go on in buildings that a lot of the community members don't see when they go to the band concert or the girls' volleyball match are, how do the roofs look? How do the air handling systems function? Are our chillers working? Do we have dehumidification in all parts of the building? Are there LED lights that are operating and creating efficiencies in our utilities? Those are things that we go a little bit deeper. And so we know that starting with physical needs are really important. And that gets back to that idea that we can have a lot of grandiose ideas, but if our structures are falling apart, it doesn't do us a lot of good if we have to go back and spend dollars in emergency situations on things that aren't working. So we want to make sure that we provide that information to you in our physical needs assessment. And you may be saying, well, what does that look like? And so we have our engineers and facility analysts that come in and look at spaces that school districts want us to look at. Most of the time we look at all of the spaces, so you get comparison data for all your sites. You have something to plan from, instead of saying, I think this is the building we need to prioritize, versus I know where we need to go with that. So we look at 16 categories and try to provide that rooftop to blacktop assessment for you, so you have all of that data at your disposal. And along with our engineers putting their eyes on things, I put this up here, and this is just an example of how our engineers and our facility analysts may look at equipment in the building. This highlights a boiler. While we have standards we use, which are ASHRAE industry standards that determine the age of the equipment and its useful life, our engineers then put their eyes on it to say, it's past its useful life, but it's been maintained so well, you probably have another 5 years that you can get from this. Or they might say, it's past its useful life and you're lucky the thing is still running. And so we provide that data to you, so you get, something quantitative as an ASHRAE standard or industry standard of how we look at equipment. But then we have our technical people actually evaluate that equipment to give you the best measurements that we can provide. Once we do that, we go straight back into report cards, just like schools know how to do well. And so we will give you conditions of each of your assets to let you know where they're at as it relates from alert all the way down to excellent. You can't be in a building, or I would strongly encourage you not to be in a building where everything is excellent, and certainly you don't want everything to be in alarm or alert either. And so you want to pace those things out, and the key to this is planning. So we'll take that and we go from there into looking at each of your asset categories. And so you can see on this slide, this is just a system age summary that we provide, as it relates to its average age, life expectancy, and the actual equipment that you have. And then we categorize that based on, again, when we put our eyes on it, we'll give you a reading. So this is a summary that you would get of all of your assets. And then we tease it down even further, and you're probably not going to be able to see all of this information right now in front of your screen, but we'll actually give the ratings, and then we'll put all of those items inventoried, and then the engineers will put different information or criteria that they've used if they've deemed it needing to be replaced or pertinent information. So from there, we go from macro to micro. So let's take a peek at one potential building. And so this gives you an idea of all of the assets in the building, and you can see on the right-hand side the different areas and where they fall. On the left-hand side, you see as a building the different representation from alarm all the way through acceptable caution and then alert. And that gives you a nice idea of where do we want to spend our time. So again, if the football coach came and said, our turf is really acting up, but it's still in caution, I can go to the alert and say, we've got other systems that are in alert. And so again, it's just a really nice way to quantify where you are at with your physical assets. Then you can take a peek at it from each of your schools and be able to see, what is playing out. And again, sometimes we work with school districts where they think one building is their problem child, and it turns out it isn't when we look at the data. And so it gives you an idea to really think long-term about where you want to invest your dollar. I'm going to pause there before we go on to educational needs. Any questions on physical needs of building? All right. So this is the fun area, especially for former educators, to think about where do we want to go with programming. I think so frequently about how I taught when I was teaching math 20 plus years ago. And what works for kids today is vastly different than what worked then. And so the spaces need to change as well. And so we have to figure out what kind of spaces we have and are they appropriate for learning today for our kids. So when we get to our educational needs, we know that our staff is critical in understanding where they teach and what they need to be successful. So we've done a lot of interviews with staff, but we also know that families have some information that's important to glean. And the best part of this is that our students are really critical when we want to understand what the learning needs should be for kids today. We have to be able to engage with our students to understand what it is they're looking for. We did a survey in Sauk Center schools before they had a large referendum. And I was amazed that the students, when we asked them, what are they hoping for? And this was after the pandemic. And they're like, we just really love our lockers. And we were all a little befuddled by that. And so we said, well, tell us, why do you like our lockers? Oh, well, that's where we gather. We like to gather. And they didn't have any other space in their building other than their lockers. And depending on what side of the alphabet you are on, you might not be in a locker space by your friends. Well, if you talk to kids today, many of them don't use their lockers. I know my son at Woodbury High School doesn't use his locker, but they find a common place to gather. And I think that that's important that we understand what the students are looking for. We also want to think about 21st century educational considerations. What are those skills that our students need to be successful in their lives after Red Wing Public Schools, whether they go on to college, take a career path, any kind of post-secondary option that they pursue. We need to figure out what are those skills that they're going to need to be successful. Then you look at educational adequacy. Do we have the spaces for what we need? Do we have enough special education spaces? We know we work with a lot of schools now that need smaller offices for students who are getting counseling sessions while they're at school, or they're taking college level courses here while they're at school, and they're doing that online or virtually. And then we also look at your enrollment. And I know that was one of the questions that was brought up here. It's very common for school districts to be losing students. It's a highly competitive market. You are right in the middle of a highly competitive area. And so it's important to understand instead of just say, I think these kids are leaving for this reason. And so we like to consider all of those parts when we look at the educational needs. When we look at staff surveys, this is just information that we'll bring back. We'll work with the school board and your leadership team to figure out what exactly are you trying to answer. And then we'll form the questions and get the survey information from your faculty. And then we bring it back to you again in the form of data for you to make informed decisions. Ideation sessions are critical to what we do. We like to throw up a slide of what learning looked like in the 70s and then compare it to a lot of our classes today. In buildings that I led, I could look at one picture from the 70s and look at another picture from 2020 and they'd be the same. And so that's not saying it's bad. It's not saying it's good. It's just saying, what does that mean? And is that where you want to go? So when we talk about 21st century education, I'd rather consider that future ready learning. Do we have what we need for our students in Red Wing to be prepared for their futures? And that looks differently in every community that we support. This is, again, just a depiction of what our adequacy surveys may look like, reaching to the stakeholders to understand what they're seeing. And again, we can help support, giving you the answers to the questions that you're trying to seek solutions for. Pause there, and I know I'm going really quickly today. Any thoughts on the programming elements?
I think that sounds really great. One of the, I guess it's not really a concern, is we did a lot of community engagement and surveys in our superintendent search. And we got a lot of really great feedback from that. We did a lot, or we're in the process of doing a lot of kind of stakeholder research information with our educational planning. And so my concern is always like, did somebody give their input in, 2 years ago for a superintendent search, and they're like, okay, I'm good. So they see a thing come out that hey, we want to hear from you. And they're like, yeah, I told you already. Are we going to lose that? I mean, I know that, so you're talking about structuring the question so that you get the most meaningful information.
Mm-hmm.
But how can we also incorporate what we've already learned and not lose that, especially if we did a good job at one point of reaching a certain pool of people and they now feel like they did it, they don't need to show up again. And then the flip side, are people going to feel like they're kind of asked out, how many times do you want to hear from me to tell you the same thing that I already said,
Yeah.
So that's just one thing that kind of pops up for me, is that concern of, I want to get as much good information as we can, but also not lose the parts that we've already gathered.
Yeah.
If it's relevant to what we're doing.
I think that makes a ton of sense. And we would want to work with your school district to understand, what have you asked community? What's your comfort with going with additional questions to understand the setting? This day and age, we have a more engaged community population than we've ever seen. And people have thoughts and opinions. It's how we, elicit those thoughts and opinions, and it's how we use those. Ultimately, those are opinions for you to make decisions. You've been elected by your citizens, but it's a great point. You don't want to ask questions that have already been asked, or create a process that they don't think that's going to lead to something that they can see.
Yes.
Do you ever make recommendations for right sizing in activities and athletics department? I think about declining enrollment and how many athletics and activities we offer, and if that is sustainable, if that is right sized for our district. Do you ever do anything like that?
Yeah, it's typically not an area that we look at. What we have helped school districts do is to, you have all sorts of relativity data that you can extrapolate. So you can look at your tax relativity and see where your tax is in relation to schools in close proximity to you, or schools that have similar enrollment populations. So we can provide that data. There's data at the public's disposal to look at where you spend your dollars as a school district, and to see if you were at Hastings High School or Hastings Public Schools, how much do they spend on athletics per student versus how much does Roseville? So you can look at some of those items. Typically, we don't make recommendations, at least from our standpoint, of what would be the optimal amount of staff to support the number of activities or services. What we do help support is getting that data to you so you can make that decision.
I just thought that would play also into like the whole facilities maintenance, how many gyms, fields, rinks, how many things you're looking at from a facilities standpoint.
Yeah, and I think that's a good question as well. We have worked with a number of school districts to look at the square footage of spaces that they pay for as far as their utilities, and we've got it broken down by square footage and enrollment. So you can see that if you're paying $1.05 per student per square footage to maintain gas, electricity, water, and school districts of your similar size are spending 95 cents. We can provide some of that information so you can see on the operational sides on utility. And I think to a similar extent, you can do that per enrollment on your employment status or on your employees that you have that are servicing those areas. But again, that typically isn't an area that we've helped school districts with too much. We can provide the data, but we haven't necessarily gotten into that level. Yeah. Other questions? All right. I'm going to move on to the third area that we typically look at, and that's the functional needs. How does our community interact with our schools? And that looks at the different spaces that we have for community education. It looks at a wide variety of things, and it can be as broad or narrow as you'd like. I've listed a couple of examples. It could be how our parking lots flow. That intersection between vehicle flow, student parking, staff parking, or events. And so we've helped support school districts in looking at some better ways to manage those areas. We also have worked with school districts to look at, your kitchen, your serving, and your dining areas in your space. Is it appropriately set up to support the students that you have? These are just some examples that we would look at, but certainly not limited to what we're able to do. As we go into funding options and prioritization, it's important to know that while we have financial analysts and while many of us who have been in public education roles understand school finance, we are not municipal advisors. That's one thing that we are not. You work with a municipal advisor that provides you with that key data for you to make decisions. But we can provide some information, and what we do know is that there are a number of levers that school districts have to use to finance various items. And it's important that school districts use those levers in a way that gives them the greatest advantage. Our rural schools have egg to school credit, which is a huge benefit. When we talk about equity, sometimes we have a vision of what equity is. And along with that vision of what equity is, I would say that there is a huge disparity between what our metro school districts are able to do with financing versus our students that are outside of that metro. And so it becomes increasingly important for school districts like Red Wing and even further into greater Minnesota, how they use their finances to best leverage the direction to go. So there are a number of different ways that as a school board that you can choose to finance projects. And so we try to help school districts find that best match. Just put together some information quickly. This is looks at your net tax capacity and your RMV. Basically, the orange area that you see here is how much you spend on operational types of things that the taxpayers help support. The blue areas is what would be funded from the taxpayers that help support the maintenance of your building. So bonds and other things of that nature. And if we were to draw of these school districts where Red Wing is at, you're probably somewhere in the middle to lower area of what your tax base is feeling in as far as relativity goes to other comparables or in close proximity to you. So this just gives you, again, just some general data to look at. If we took it a step further and said, let's say that you want to do a project to expand your programming or you want to reopen Jefferson School, what kind of costs would be associated for us to tackle something significant? And again, these are numbers that we can put together. You would want to work with a municipal advisor to understand this more clearly, but looking at different costs per area there's a 10 million, 20 million, 30 million. You can see what the impact would be annually on a $250,000 home. And then we broke that out per acre for the egg to school purpose. So again, that just gives you some background information for you to consider. So there is no project that is out there yet. There's a lot of conversations about the things that you want to do. And I think one of the greatest values that SiteLogic will provide is helping you prioritize your needs. So once you've looked at, your educational needs assessment, your facility needs assessments, and you look at some of the community needs, and you look at your funding, then it comes down to prioritizing. Where are you going to spend your limited resources to tackle your greatest priorities? And so we would itemize all of those items that we've talked about. So if there are some facility needs, you put price tags to them. If there's some programming needs, you put price tags to them. And you can walk through and look at, in each step of these, you look at the facility, the category. The FIM list is called a facility improvement measure. And then you have the condition of that asset. And then I'll show you the prioritization over here. So the school board and the leadership team has a chance to prioritize where is it that you want to spend your resources. And when doing that, we think that you're able to make sure that you don't start one program without considering other things or priorities or what it's going to cost to run that program. And so all of those items come out to a list that we can create and help support. It's expensive to run and maintain schools. And so if you categorize as far as your long-range priorities, and starting with a low priority to intermediate priority, you can see in this sample of the immediate priorities in this district, which is just a sample district, there's about $3 million of needs. But over time, what they're saying is there's over $12 million of needs, and that's where becoming planful and how you use your resources is extremely important. So again, we want to engage your community, make sure it is whatever you do is grounded in their support. We want to make sure that you have the technical support needed to make informed decisions. And then we want to make sure that it's fiscally responsible. So all those parts are critical for you to feel good about any forward direction that you want to take. And here is where it all lies for me. And what's extremely exciting is when you look at all of those things come together and you put the data on the table. Jokingly, I started and said, I have all the answers for you, and I don't. But I am convinced that we can find the data to sit down in front of a group, your board, your facility team, your leadership team, and to come up with what is best. And you have to consider all of those different areas to make really, really good decisions for your community. Any questions on the workshopping process? Typically, when we put together all of this information, the board or the facility committee will spend 2 or 3 meetings just weighing all of that and prioritizing where they want to go with that information in their next steps.
Yes.
I think it would be helpful to just back up 2 steps and talk about why you are here,
Yeah.
why we have this presentation to begin with. We've spent an enormous amount of time in the last year, 2 years, talking about strategic planning, looking at all of our programming. We're starting to make very concerted efforts at looking at all of our programming needs, how we're serving our students. Each building is coming up with goals and ways in which we can serve our students better. And it felt to us, I can speak a little bit about this, but it felt to us like you can't talk about programming and goals of our whole district from pre-K all the way up to graduation and beyond without talking about where are we going to do all these programming things. And as we started looking at our strategic direction and our goals and our vision for the district, I don't think that we can talk about one without talking about the other, really. And so if I understand it correctly, that's where this conversation led, was to having somebody come and help us look at our facilities, where we're at in our buildings, what our needs are, what our vision and our dreams are, to best serve and utilize our space, but best serve our students in the programming goals that we have that have come out of our strategic planning. Anything to add to that?
I think originally came out of the bursting at the seams at some of our schools. And they learning from you and just talking collectively, and then all of the work that we are doing for our strategic planner, that really feeds into your communities. So it did start with, Burnside, doesn't have a lot of room. We have kind of these, what I would say are different configurations with 5, 6, 7, with
Yep.
8th graders at the high school, which is kind of tough to transition into. So there's a lot of levels, and our community is concerned with that as well.
I know that we've, last year, we did some lighting throughout our school district, spent quite a bit of money on that, and I know the roofs have been looked at, where they're at with them. But- So, some of the things that you've talked about, may already be looking on the, good side, not
Yeah.
the alarm side. So, but, yeah, you're right, I think we're looking at the, busting at the seams, how do we get the maximum use of our interior of our buildings? Yeah, I think that's where the real area that we're looking at. Not saying we're not, but it doesn't hurt to have another look at it to see how we're doing. So we don't be complacent as a district, so.
And I think it would be helpful to have it in that larger framework of that plan, to be able to look at that and say, like, this is what we're looking out at. Otherwise, sometimes it feels like when we get kind of those updates on like, this is a thing that we can do to fix this, like, okay, great, but like, where does that fall into that grand scheme of that prioritizing and making sure that we're making the most responsible decisions with what we have?
Yeah.
So I like that idea of having that laid out a little bit more.
And again, the goal for me tonight, and some of our services may not match what you need, is to share a little bit about who we are as a company. And we're going to zoom in on exactly what it is that you need to have to get the results that you want for your strategic plan. And so some of that may be a conversation with your lead facility people to say, yep, we're good here, but we might want you to look at a couple of things here. And then the majority of time is spent in areas that really zero in on, if we're going to use Jefferson, what is it going to be used for? If it's a kindergarten space, or if it's a community space, what does it need to look like? And then our team would come and say, here are some options to revitalize that space. So it all starts with, what is exactly you want to have us do for you. And so any other thoughts or?
Thank you very much for coming.
Yeah.
We have a couple other topics to discuss
Yeah.
tonight too, but we learned a lot already on what you kind of do. And again, with Lieutenant Wagner and the leadership team, I look forward to hearing back as to some of the suggestions and ideas
You bet.
and directions that you speak to and want to give us on your report.
You bet.
Is this something we've already contracted with, or, okay?
But we'll work as a team, and then I'll connect.
Yeah.
We haven't really heard anything about cost. I'm just curious what the cost is to.
Yeah. So appreciate that question. Right now, what we'd be asking for is time. Our model is based on prove it, work on trust. If a project comes out of it, then there is a cost associated. So typically when you use our services, because of the value we add with all of the entities, when we look at those services, you're 2 to 6% typically cheaper working with a firm that has all under one roof. That's what we've found doing FOIA requests. Right now, as we're in the preliminary stages, what we'd be looking for is the opportunity to build trust. And until we have a scope of a project, we won't have like what the fees are and those kinds of things. But we work with school districts until there's a point where there are funds that can be accessed. So whether they're bonds that are sold, or whether they are board authority projects that can be done, or leveraging finances from other areas, we don't get paid unless there's a project determined.
Very good.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. Nice meeting you.
Nice to meet you as well. Yeah, if I can figure out where the stop sharing is. Oh, there we go. Got it. All right, thank you.
Thank you. Unfunded mandates. And, Ms. Ryder, forward, please. certainly thought the list would be longer.
We'll give you enough to show my sheet. Lisa and I have actually worked on this presentation together, so it made sense programmatically to talk through, what the language of the legislation that's come through. There are obviously in the Web and Friday updates, a whole laundry list of things that you guys can look at with the deadline. We're just prioritizing some that are kind of coming to the top that have a little bit more precedence. The other thing I want to put into the space is we're talking about the underfunded or unfunded mandates. I want you to think kind of globally, we are going to give some money, but also thinking about time, people, resources, and the amount of sweat equity that goes into some of these is ultimately directly correlated to cost. So Lisa and I will kind of be going back and forth with what this looks like and feels like specifically to Red Wing and then just globally in Minnesota, because I've been working with the Big Nine Soups. Lisa's been working with Director of Finance and Operations in every district. Is doing similar things or creative things and understanding how we can use our money most optimally. So all of you are aware that we had a bill approved in May, June of 2023 that actually was publicized as this unprecedented amount of money, $2.3 billion, which is a little bit misleading in that there are a lot of unfunded or underfunded mandates tied to it. So we'll talk a little bit more about what that actually looks like in reality. The bill did increase the formula for 2024 to 4%, and then an additional 2% in 2025. Lisa will talk a little bit more about the general funds and really the gap in what does it actually mean. But for people, when you're thinking about average daily membership or ADM, that increased by about 6.8%, so 7,138 per pupil in the fiscal year 2024, where it's currently 6,600. So that is actually created by formula distribution, and then of course our district enrollment, and then specifics to a student's profile in the district. So I always talk about students as cupcakes, so everybody comes in as a cupcake, and then you add on like the frosting and the sprinkles and the cherries, and so there's just different funds that come on depending on what students actually need to be successful as they walk through the public school. So that's just in summary the education bill. Just to kind of put it in perspective, I'll let Lisa take this over. She shared this during truth and taxation or audit information with the general and formula allowance and kind of the disparity as presented.
Thank you, Superintendent Wagner. This particular graph, as I had included in the truth and taxation hearing, it's a very common graph that's used across schools, as it has, you can see, been around for quite a number of years, where we've been tracking exactly where is our general education fund formula compared to what it would be if it were actually at inflation. And so what you see is the blue line is what we would be receiving if it were based upon inflation, CPI. And if not, then you see the dotted line, which is what we are actually receiving. So yes, the 4% was in the legislative session, but as you can see, our inflation skyrocketed during this period of time. And so everyone understands and knows what that feels like. And so the 4% is very greatly appreciated. It's just not going to be enough for us, is our concern.
I'm always about multiple exposures in the same document, so you understand how that works. Special ed cross subsidies, we have our special ed folks in the house, so they probably easily can read this just a little bit. What I wanted to clarify is actually what cross subsidy means. So it's actually a term that refers to school districts paying for special ed programs from their general fund. So as that gap increased and all the way back to 4%, 2%, and we're looking at the different cross subsidies, there's certainly, we haven't eliminated the cross subsidy. If that would be the case, it would be 100% funding for the needs of our students who receive special ed services. The one thing that is super interesting, and this is my wheelhouse as a multilingual specialist, is by 2027 there is the elimination of the cross subsidy, so that will have incremental increases for our multilingual students, which has been significantly underfunded for many years. So thinking about those students who are applying to English as a second, third, or a third language. So, and then the last part here is really thinking about. I'll give the money to you.
So as we took a look at this, we're always kind of doing a look back to really truly understand what that cross subsidy looked like for us. And so the most current information that is available with the MDE's calculation is that which is for fiscal year 2022. This will soon be coming out and recalculated then for 2023 for everyone. But for us at Red Wing, In 2022 fiscal year, we had a $3.3 million cross-subsidy amount for special education. I looked just before coming in, and the fact of the matter is that our special education aid for fiscal year 24 compared to fiscal year 23, remember everything's a year behind there, did increase by about $2 million right now compared to the previous year. You can see how that's not going to be enough to cover that, right? That cross subsidy is going to continue to grow, and yet what they are trying to do is bring it down so it's not as great. So again, appreciated funds, just a little underfunded still.
So any questions about class subsidies, special ed, 4%, 2%?
Our questions, but we'll wait till we know.
How many of you are familiar with the READ Act? Anybody has questions about what you know, or maybe a little bit more? We've actually been ahead of the game a little bit with the READ Act in that we have designed a calendar this year that has embedded 2 professional development days. We had a handful of teachers actually go through the letters training when the state was kind of rolling it out. Now we have our K-4 teachers actually embedded into the letters training, but essentially the READ Act is replacing the Read Well by 3rd grade, which is part of our World Special Ed course. There is funding that was allocated to Read Well by 3rd grade. That funding is still available to us, but there are mandates tied to it now. So rather than having it just be available for us to use at our discretion for literacy, curriculum, training, professional development, and the like, is now very specifically tied to the learning. So what's happening right now is we are in phase 1. In Redmond specifically, some districts are still trying to figure out how they're going to train teachers because there's quite significant amount of time that is required for training. So that's one thing that I would say we've been very thoughtful of. But we have been using our own staff development dollars, our own curriculum dollars to be able to fund. We have some grants that are coming in to help offset the cost, but they're not really necessarily to be able to be purposeful. So phase 1 right now is really our elementary teachers. Phase 2 does include a 6-12 component, so any teacher who is both your multilingual teachers, the eligible special ed students, our ELA teachers who are going to have some impact on ensuring that they are embedding putting awareness, phonics, literacy, and other component pieces will actually drive our costs up for staff development. So generally speaking, the cost for Redmond Public Schools as of right now, phase 1 cost us about $26,000. We anticipate for 2025 we'll have an additional cost of staff development needs at $42,000. The READ Act on January 1, the state will actually make recommendations for vetted literacy curriculum. We don't necessarily have to eliminate or replace our curriculum, but we will have to supplement the curriculum we have with some phonics-based instruction and thinking about what does that look like. We haven't costed that out just yet. So there will be some other requirements for our 6-12 teachers that have foundational training in science and reading. So our secondary teachers are not free from having staff development around. So phase 2 costs, again, we need to calculate that because there's a significant amount of time allocated to it. And so what we've done is try to embed into the contractual role the amount of opportunities our teachers have to actually finish what's about 144 hours of professional, which is quite significant if you calculate that out to the number of teachers who use our curriculum and staff development. Again, the funds are restricted. So the funds that we previously used for Read Well by 3rd grade are now coming out of general fund dollars, and so that impacts our just general ability to be able to pay for the component pieces of this immediate system.
Could you talk more about what the restricted funds are being used for or can be used for? You know, if they can't be used for this, what are they able to be used for?
So specifically curricula. So in the event, so January 1, the state will have to say these are the 3 curricula. Or you continue to use your current curriculum if it has gaps in it, you need to use that money to actually backfill. Staff development for the gaps. I'm thinking that's majority of what it is. It's the curricula, it's backfilling the gaps that the current curriculum has. It's not saying get rid of what you have, because we actually spent I believe, and don't quote me, I'm sure everyone's watching this, 300,000+ on vendors. Plus these component pieces in that, over the course of 7 years. But we missed the cutoff for reimbursement for purchase of curriculum. So had you purchased a literacy curriculum in 21, 22, then we're going to reimbursement fee to order a curriculum. And we missed that. We're still ironing out some of these component pieces, looking at training trainers, optimizing the requirement for phonics that's needed for literacy students, besides some remaining component pieces. So any other things?
Just the idea that there's always, well, for the past few years, there's been this literacy incentive aid, and instead of actually adding additional dollars to be made available for this purpose, they dedicated those funds for that purpose. So in the past, it would have been unrestricted dollars that we could use towards whatever our needs were. Now they're restricted.
I will say, and I've said this before, I think graduating was ahead of the game and understanding how this works, because I work with other instructors in instruction, other superintendents who they are really trying to figure out what does this actually mean. As we go into negotiations, we won't necessarily have to worry about outside of instructional time. Component pieces, but other districts are testing and
Yes.
Are there grants out for, have we received any or
Yes. So we received 2 grants. We had one for $7,000 at the middle level and one for $6,000 at the school. Won't put the exact amount. There was quite a bit of money out there. We actually won a grant for significantly more, but that was the.
Why didn't we get anything for the elementary?
Probably because we already have a plan in place. I don't really know why they didn't allocate any to us for before specifically, but however, I don't get anything like that.
Yes.
So the 144 hours of professional development, how is that really going to be done? And will there be a huge need for substitute teachers? Like we talked about, maybe not during.
So this currently the letters training is all modules. And so what we did is we designed our PLC time. So our time, 3 of the PLCs, and Jen, you can jump in if I get this incorrect. PLC days a month are actually designated to module agreement. Encouraged to practice. Now, the one thing that our first group of volunteer teachers did were some Zoom live sessions to have opportunities to partner, but the PLC time is actually increased. So we have been able to get all the hours within the time that we have, plus the added PDAs that are in our current.
So is that 144 hours per person going through the training, or is that 144 hours? I guess I'm just not really understanding that piece. Okay, because that's like 4 weeks of full-time work.
So it'll be 2 years worth,
It's 2 years.
Over 2 years.
over the course of 2 years, yes.
Per person.
Each person completes the 140.
During work time.
During the
During,
contractual.
yeah, during the contractual day, but during our professional learning communities. And for those that volunteered to do that, they did it all in a year, last year, so.
And how long is that training good for then? Is that-
It's really a great background knowledge. It's really just a framework and background knowledge in how we teach reading. Right, so from what we're going to do, from the learning that we do from there, it really is supposed to affect our instruction and how we're working through phonics, phonemic awareness, and all of those stages of reading. So we are trying to use it as like a jumping off point to really look at data and how we change our instructional practices based on the kids we have.
I
So
was just wondering though, like if a teacher goes through and completes those 144 hours, is that it then? Like they're not on the hook for continuing
No.
education to supplement that? Okay.
Not yet.
I was just thinking.
well, we do have, there are licensure requirements surrounding reading, so yes, but nothing that is gonna be as dramatic. I would liken it to a college class that we probably should have taken when we were an undergrad, but we didn't have this.
Is there anything with new teachers, like having that built into their curriculum, you know, in that?
In the larger institutions, the post-secondary institutions are not yet getting that, because that would just be an intern class continuously for us, but it would make sense that under undergrad programming, the teacher would in that. to what degree and what the depth, I mean, I think they're probably building the airplane.
It's flying.
There are other subtle nuances with the REACT 2 and the legislation that the literacy coordinator, director, house, because eventually this will evolve, right? You know, a language of government within every specific district and you feel very unique to the district, but the goal is that we are closing that achievement gap versus, you know, statewide, we're less than 50% of students. So there is a unit.
Yes.
Did you say that our current Wonders curriculum is okay, but it needs supplementing? Where,
We anticipate based on what is going, we don't know what's going to come out after the new year from the state. But we anticipate we would probably have to backfill with some supplemental resources to be able to meet the minimum requirements. I'm not saying that for sure, but that's what we're anticipating, so we have to about the costs.
so is that a curriculum that is likely to be on the approved list, or probably not because there are gaps? Or it's the updated version of that?
It will be the work around.
Yeah.
So you're not going to have to go through and replace your entire curriculum unless it's something that's like significant, but you are going to have to fill the gaps.
And
So-
is that funded?
No.
Okay. Good question.
It'll be a cost of it.
Great.
Any other
So
questions?
I was under the impression that the READ Act came with funding for curriculum.
Well, there's money that comes in.
Yeah.
I think maybe, and don't quote me on this either, I know we're recorded. I think some of that was for those people who purchased their curriculum after the specific date to reimburse. Most of it is in separate element. We're developing those fundamental foundational skills.
It's the best practice.
Thank you. Good discussion.
Unemployment insurance, this is actually coming from the Department of Labor, but what the impact is specifically for school districts is that hourly school professionals that work in our system are now able to apply for unemployment insurance over the summer months. So that's new legislation. We did have some of our employees this last summer actually take advantage of that. The one thing to note about this one is it's significantly underfunded. There's about $135 million that was allocated in the last session to be able to cover the costs for school districts this last summer. The caveat to that is that last bullet where it says the funds are not permanent. They could be used for June 30, 2027 or until exhausted. So thinking about St. Paul, Minneapolis, the larger school districts, and if we really do scale the amount of unemployment insurance that is tapped into is quite significant. This last summer, we had about $92,000 that was paid through those $135 million. But we know moving forward that in summer 24, we anticipate there will be about a 25% or more increase to that baseline, which depending on where the funding stream is and what's left, would be a cost that's incurred on this.
And I would add that just today at 3:30, the conversation around our MASBO group, which is the Minnesota Association of School Business Officials, was in discussion of the unemployment insurance. And of that $135 million, they are now reporting that $43 million was spent this last summer. And so moving forward, they're anticipating that we'll have enough funding potentially to get us through this next summer. But beyond that, it'll likely be prorated. So we will not make, it'll run out. It'll be exhausted prior to the deadline that was otherwise set. So that's the assumption. And as we were anticipating, many other schools are reporting as well that they anticipate a much higher use this next summer, simply because there was very little time for people to really truly understand the how do you do this, when do you do this kind of thing. And now that that's been managed, there's anticipated that a far greater number of people will participate. We had 40 this past summer, so we'll see how that number increases.
So is this something that our legislature, this is an off year, right?
Mhm.
So they're not funding or big funding, correct? Don't we do the big funding packages every other year? So does this mean then we have to hope that the next funding year because this will all run out before then, correct? That it will be refunded, or we need to put some effort forward to lobby our legislators to fund that again, if we're gonna do this.
Yes,
Yeah, okay.
yes.
Okay.
All right, and then, ESST, endpoints, everybody knows what that stands for.
Start safe and safe time.
Endpoints. Well done. Learn Safe and Safe Time, is actually going to impact us a little bit differently. So Lisa and I were kind of wrapping our heads. Actually, Lisa, Christina, Paige, a group of leaders are really kind of wrapping their heads around what does this look like and feel like for all of our different targeting groups. It's a little easier in some than others. It was actually designed for other entities, not necessarily education. So it makes it a little bit more complicated to actually put a number to this and have this work out in such a way that makes sense. But essentially, an employee can earn 1 hour sick time or save time in nearly 38 hours worked for a maximum of 48 hours. And we're going to do additional contributions specifically to our teachers' contract. But essentially, any employee is eligible for sick and save time. They have to have worked at least 80 hours in a year in Minnesota. They're not independent contractors, so temporary part-time employees are eligible for sick and save time. So think about those unique positions where maybe we have a coach who comes in and over the course of the summer would be, as long as there's 80 hours, then they can start to make 1 hour or anything else. It's just very unique. That we are, again, this is one that's probably the weakest for us to have developed, but actually goes into effect January 1. So sadly, I can't tell you what the cost impact will be, but it does mean that we are working around really turning this around by January 1 for our. Any other additions, yes?
I would say just a lot of conversation around it, a lot of frequently asked questions being produced by various different entities and the schools. In our community, we have been working as a group to try and determine exactly what are all of our questions. We've involved an attorney to work through this and interpret law as well and try and help us understand how we would implement this. Our challenge, as Superintendent Wagner mentioned, is the fact that our software also needs to be able to track and monitor this information. And so they're being put on the spot as well to get this all set and ready to go by January 1. And in addition, then it's us, how are we going to manage and track this? Again, everyone is going to do the very best we can as we get into this. But we know that many of our questions that are going into the Department of Labor and Industry, they're still working through and have not necessarily figured out all the answers yet either for us. So this is one of those things that we just have to kind of, it truly will be built as we move forward and work with it. And we know some things, some of our answers have been clearly defined and understood, and schools are unique compared to other industries. The intent behind this was not, it's intended primarily for those industries that just do not offer any type of sick leave, safe and sick time. And so that's not necessarily the case for school districts in general, although there are areas in which this may apply very well for some of our employees.
I think the safe part of this to understand is the standard that is in why they work.
Right.
That's not just limited to this. Other circumstances that actually present for employees.
This wouldn't apply to our coaches and that anyway, would it? Because they're stipend paid, so they don't have a minimum hour of punching in and they flex their time. Right?
So initially it was thought it would, but we pushed back on that, and they have agreed that if you would not change their stipend, if they were missing a day of practice, then they would not be, this would not apply. Does that make sense? So anytime you are actually paying someone on an hourly basis, then it does apply. But if you're paying it on a stipend basis that's not being modified because they're out today, then it does not apply.
How does that impact our subs, especially if they're employed through the teachers on call?
So teachers on call will be affected as well as an employer. So it really does boil down to who is producing the W-2 for that person, and that's who's then responsible for this. Now, if you have an employee that works 80 hours, just 80 hours in the year, this then is something they're subject we as an employer are subject to providing. So you just have to really track and monitor, particularly those physicians.
Is the TLC would be responsible for those people not having?
Correct.
And then last but not least, we do have existing funding challenges. As you know, ESSER funds were put into effect during COVID. All of our ESSER funds that we have remaining must be obligated by September 30th of next year. So what we are doing at the district office is we're looking at determining those expenditures that those funds have covered historically, those funding funds have covered, and what we're going to continue. After the ESSER funds are exhausted and trying to capitalize and maximize all of them, we will have to look at other funding sources in the district to continue those priorities. And then looking at prioritizing our expenditures and developing our future budget. So what we've had in the past, similar to achieving integration, which we had about $285,000 worth last year, was not continued this year, so you know, essentially we have to cover costs related to those services, or we decide we don't continue with specific positions or services that have been. Some other just nuanced items with our unfunded and underfunded mandates, again, to remember food, nutrition, and meal reimbursement is down 15 cents per meal versus the budget programs that we have used in the past 2 years. So ultimately that has a compounding impact on what we're doing. Financial there too. Cost of food and supplies have increased significantly. We are working with Just Penny to look at what does that look like across the board. So, again, we're just scratching the surface. We just highlighted a few that we're just working with more frequently, but in the web, try to look at that lovely Excel spreadsheet that we had a chance to look at it twice. I put it in twice. So it actually gives you the deadlines and when everything has to go in. A couple of other highlights we didn't necessarily put in are some curriculum expectations, personal finance, ethnic studies. We're looking at those are just natural course pieces that we'll have to take, but it's time, money, resources to find curriculum, resource and sequence, curriculum writing, and again, that just compounds, the money that we get from general fund, staff development, and other grants that we can get. Great, Mr. Bryant.
Well, let's come else for today. Else have any questions before me?
I think I just have a comment in that the bottom line is that it's great that we've got the increase of 6%, but what I'm hearing you saying is that we really can't calculate right now how much all these mandates are gonna cost, but it's gonna eat up a good chunk, if not more, than that 6%.
On top of that, many of the unfunded mandates start next school year when we get a 2% bump. So I've dealt with unfunded mandates in my other positions I've held, and they're just people sitting somewhere. It's not a slam against them, but they're just sitting thinking that they have great ideas, but it comes at cost. And the cost is going to affect the educational product that we produce as a school in the state of Minnesota. And we have to get that to them to know that what they're telling us we have to do, that unfunded mandates, that comes with a cost that if they want to do mandates, they need to fund them. And we need to know what that is. Each school should come up with a way to figure out what those costs are going to be generally, not, ballpark. So when they say, well, you got this much money, okay, but this much money's gone in 2 years. Well, it's not enough to cover because these costs were now this. You calculated that. We added as a group, State of Minnesota Association and all that need to work together to get this message across that your ideas, we hear them, but they're real kind of unrealistically be able to fund them with the dollars that we are given. And by doing that, hopefully something will change up there. Because if it doesn't change, if each school goes up there and tries to pick their fight with them individually, that's just going to find, well, it's just that's just that school, it's just that area. But collectively, if we all work together And that conference is coming up to do this, because I think our governor or other people, legislators will be talking, and this is not a bad time to let them know how we feel. And to do that, we need to do it all together. We need to know what it's gonna cost us, because in my eyes, I'm seeing 2% is a nice number back when inflation was so high, but okay, it's 2%, but it's not gonna cover what we need. And then you've got rising cost of electricity, you go on salary adjustment, insurance, health insurance, heat, vehicles, all this other stuff is factored in 2%. It's just, can't get $1.20 out of $1. So, yes.
Well, and I think, we had Representative Altendorf here warning of this, and I think we have to keep in mind that we need to use our representatives locally and our senators. I mean, they represent us. We don't necessarily have to do it, but we need to have engagement with them to represent our district. And, so I encourage them to continue to come and have dialogue with us and represent what you just said, like what we need, where those numbers are coming short, because it's how you do it, right? I mean.
No, we need to work with them. I'm not saying that one bit. I'm just saying, we just, as a group, as a school district, your own state of Minnesota, what's it, 2,000-3,000? I don't know what the number is. How many, anybody know?
How many school districts? I think it's between 250 and 300.
250?
Well, okay, no, there's charters and everything else. I'm
Okay,
wrong.
however there are, I don't think as one of them is gonna say, we got enough money to meet those needs. So collectively, we have.
Right.
Well, and I think we need to our representatives need to stop complaining about them. Or playing the blame game or whatever. We need to call us out of it and do what's best we can.
Or whichever party's involved, or whichever party made the
Right.
decisions, have to be told that
Right.
we hear this, no matter what party that, it's not even a political party or issue, it's an issue that came down from people that thought they were trying to do what's right,
Right,
but then when you do what you think is right, follow the dollars, show me the money.
right.
That's a great saying, and I mean, show me the money. All right, let's go on. Anybody else have anything else? Process update the mission statement. Do you want to do that, or do you want to wait on that? Huh? The other thing, okay, the other thing, I thought Lisa contacted me, was, are we not having a workshop in January, first meeting? She said we don't have a workshop, and I'm thinking, why don't we do a workshop? We're all gonna be here anyway. I know, I'm just saying, but does anybody else
Is that
assuming
because
that
you
they?
have to hold your business meeting first?
No, you can do it. You can do the workshop and then hold the business meeting.
Yeah, I just always plan to be here at 5:00. So.
I think we'll just plan on doing a workshop, and I'd say we put the unfunded mandates on that as one topic. Anything else that we figure out? I would like to do a workshop. Anybody else? Yes. We can talk about them again.
Okay. So are you talking, what's our strategy to deal with this?
I don't know what my strategy is, but I'm probably going. But no, okay. So let's move this to the next meeting then, the mission, process update, mission statement.
You don't want to do that in updates?
You can do that at an update too, but I think we need to do it in a workshop too.
Oh, yeah. That's what you're talking about, not other than a meeting.
No.
Okay.
All right, any other topics? All right, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn the workshop.
I moved.
Moved by Ms. Rose, in a second.
Second.
Second by 3 people, which one wants to take credit? Ms. Ossendorf?
No,
Roll call vote.
Yeah, it was Jennifer.
Jennifer? Excuse me, Ms. Tifton. Roll call vote, Ms. Obenfelder?
Aye.
Ms. Rowe?
Aye.
Ms. Tiff?
Aye.
Ms. Buck?
Aye.
Ms. Ossendorf?
Aye.
Ms. Bjornstedt?
Aye.
Chair votes aye. We will adjourn the workshop and we will convene in about 6:30, 10 minutes, and we'll start the regular meeting. That's what you guys want to do is wait another 10 minutes, right? along with Superintendent Wagner. Ms. Buck is virtual, and we'll be doing roll call votes tonight due to the fact that we have somebody that's virtual. We've already done the Pledge of Allegiance. Now we have the the meeting agenda. Are there anybody have anything they'd like to add or take? Hearing none, I'll entertain a motion to approve the agenda.
So,
Moved by Ms. Schoenfelder, is there a second?
second.
Second by who? Ms. Tip, okay. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Oh, roll call. I just said it too. Ms. Buck,
Aye.
Ms. Bjornstedt,
Aye.
Ms. Schoenfelder,
Aye.
Ms. Ossendorf.
Aye.
Ms. Tip.
Aye.
Ms. Rowe.
Aye.
Chair votes aye. I just said it, and I just went around and didn't do it. Okay, the educational plan is over there in the corner of our room every meeting. We follow that. We will work through that. And then Ms. Schoenfelder is going to read our mission statement.
The mission of the Red Wing Public Schools is to educate and inspire all students as they realize their full potential and become respectful, responsible, and productive citizens.
Thank you. Recognitions and upcoming events.
I have a recognition.
Okay, go ahead.
It's not operational, I'm sorry, but you could get it. You can see what I'm saying. This actually came in the mail today, so it's pretty timely. It is from MSBA. It is a certificate, for Anna. And I'm just gonna read it to you so I can do justice. Okay. She's nervous now. It says the Minnesota School Board Association awards the program that includes category recognition for those people who complete 100 hours or more of service and attendance at MSBA sponsored meetings and activities within a 4-year period. We are pleased to inform you now also for the team records for 2024.
Congratulations. All right.
New school board members, see what you can aspire to.
Yes. So I will give this to you.
What's going on?
Congratulations. Thank you.
Congratulations. Speech? Anybody have anything else? I'll just say happy holidays, everybody. And we have 4 more days of school for this year. 4 hard-packed, action, fun days, it looks like, when we're reading the newsletter that came out. So enjoy this and look forward to a very prosperous 2024. Any public comment, Mr. Bierman? Anybody back there signed up?
Negative.
Thank you. Ms. Wagner, you get any emails? I did not either. Student and school showcase, who's gonna take that?
Great, so you have 3 extra chairs up to the front.
Come right up here.
And then Lisa, if you must like it.
We'll have you introduce yourself, sit down there, the owl, there's that white thing right behind the screen there that you're trying to show your mom to see. She finally saw it, I think. So why don't you go ahead and introduce yourselves and then we can, however you want to do it, I'll begin.
My name is David Lexwell. This is my first year in NHS. I'm a junior in high school. And then, here with me today, we have Eli, our vice president, and then Annika Johnson and AJ Mickelson, who are also members with us. And then tonight's goal is for us just to help you guys understand what National Honor Society is and what we do around the school and community. Next slide, please.
So we have 4 pillars at NHS. The first one is scholarship, and scholarship is just our commitment to learning. We always strive to do our best no matter what the reward is and who's watching. And we got service. So we do a lot of service around the community, and it's kind of just one of the fundamental things of being in NHS. You volunteer and you do all that kind of stuff. We got leadership. Most of the people in NHS, we lead. We, in our sports or in school or whether it's just like a group, we lead. And then we got character, and character is who we are even when no one's watching. So we always help people, and yeah.
Next slide, please.
And then this is just our community involvement. So National Honor Society has many volunteer opportunities throughout the school year. NHS members are required to have at least 20 volunteer hours each school year. Many, if not all of our members exceed this number and try and make it a competition of who can get the most hours. By the end of the 2023-2024 school year, our Red Wing chapter of NHS will have achieved hundreds of volunteer hours.
Next slide, please.
So some examples of the volunteer hours volunteer things that we have done out in the community is like a couple weeks ago we had a blood drive and we actually had a really good turnout. We had 52 people sign up and we also had a waiting list on that too. So we had even more that just couldn't donate. And then we also had our NHS induction banquet where we showed who all the people that are in the NHS. We also helped out with the holiday stroll. So we helped set up some of the things and then we also helped take everything down.
Are there any questions?
Yes, how do you, who keeps track of your time and how did somebody get back to the group to say how many people put up, how many hours you put in?
So it's based on like the honor society. So pretty much Jeff Chalmers is like our kind of head of the NHS. So he trusts all the members in NHS to record their own hours. So then at the end of the year, each member turns in like a form of like hours they have, and then he adds them all up, and we have a total of that at the end of the school year.
Now that you said that, I remember my son and daughter were involved.
Any other questions?
Questions at all?
How many hours do you all work?
I think I have like
couple.
I'm over 20 already.
I think I have like 22 so far.
I also finished mine.
Do you have any others in any hours? Haven't been.
You can always email anyone if you guys have any volunteer
Yeah.
opportunities.
And keep
those
too, yeah.
NHS.
All those.
If you email Ari Holzer, Jeff Chalmers, or any of us, we can get that set up if there's any volunteer opportunities that you guys need.
On a school day.
Mhm.
And then I'll tell you.
Thank you for all that you do for the community service.
You have
being
more?
great leaders.
That's it. There's no
All
more
right,
questions.
well, how many members are in this year?
It's over 50.
We had like probably around 30 new members inducted and around probably like 20 returning members from last year.
10th, 11th, and 12th?
Only
Yes.
11th and 12.
11th and 12th.
Correct.
All right, well, the last thing you guys do is for spotlights or certificates is take it.
Thank you.
Well, if you're to stand here, we're all gonna get a picture together. Mr. Nicholson's gonna take it. Stand, you can stand behind me.
Watch out for the cord.
Yeah.
Just
have you.
How am I gonna get you all in? If you guys wanna sit in front, or stand in
Somebody get
front.
down maybe on their knees? I can't anymore.
Oh, yes, yes.
Do you want the kids to do that? Then you can't see how tall they are. We let on the kids there. Then you gotta come in close. Martina, do you wanna go on the other side? Oh, there we go. Yeah, and then come in so you're in focus. That's a terrible background, but that's all right. Okay, all right. And Jennifer, do you want to move that way a little bit? There, perfect. Okay. All right, ready? Okay, 1, 2, 3. I'll take another one. 1, 2, 3. And then do I send that to Martina?
Sure.
Okay.
Thank you. Thanks, guys. Nice to meet you. Thanks for coming in here. Appreciate it. Say hi to your dad. Nicholson. Yeah. Thank you, young man. Thanks for coming in. Thank you. Have a good year. Yeah, right. School board reports. Who wants to start?
I think there's a negotiations update later on. There was an update in Wagner Friday updates. We have 4 groups in negotiations now. We're wrapping up for the historians. Close, we're close.
Okay. I had an LMC meeting at 4 today, and I let them know that the board is looking at the cost of the well at Work Clinic, because they're looking to go into RFPs, because it's that process we asked to do, kind of tied in with most of 2024. The utilization is going down and the costs are going up. So you kind of pointed, you two over here kind of pointed that out, and I said the board was looking at that, so it didn't come as a surprise to them as we go forward. Anybody else have anything? Yes, Ms. Tiffany.
We had a district advisory committee meeting and they don't want to assess the reports.
The other thing, talking to some board members here, next year, the organizational meeting, as we're organizing and talking whoever's in charge, talk about the committees and that we have listed, because some may or may not be actually being involved or meeting or conducting, so we'll be discussing that as a group as to what committees we go forward. Should be something that we should be serving on, participating in, so. Okay, all right, we'll move on. Administrative reports.
You want me to do the vision and mission?
That's fine. We're gonna bring it to the next workshop.
I was thinking a quick update. So I put into, because I don't have a lot of updates, Wagner Wednesday, there was not one this month, but we'll have another one coming up in January. And then we decided in February, we have another World Cafe coming up, but that will replace the Wagner Wednesday. So just kind of having a pause this summer. So we will talk about this probably tomorrow at an agenda meeting, but then bring it to the workshop in January. But part of is vision and mission. We've done some mission crafting. You think about what we've done for what Anna brought up, the superintendent search, what we've done specifically for our new Maxim, which they just really united. So all of that data we've collected. We've also collected some feedback at our last World Cafe that will all be included. So they have been lost. We have them all compiled, but this team, in addition to perhaps the ad hoc committee and district leadership, will be doing some more refinements and validation. So what I put together in this document is a general outline. However, what I would suggest is if we do a workshop January 2nd, we kind of flesh this out a little bit more and talk about what are those nuanced pieces and we'll also look at some of the data that we've collected over the course of the last year, really with our inflection planner, and then we go back to some of the superintendent feedback from all of the different community groups and student groups to kind of embed that. So it will all be part of that magic. What I like about this document too, Andy actually sharing the facilities piece, it will speak to all of that. So everything is kind of coming together nicely. So we're going to start at 24, 25 school year with vision and mission, and hopefully a well-defined strategic plan. That was it for now.
Do you have a date for that February cafe?
I think it's February 22nd.
Let's go, can we have a conversation on how that would work?
Right now, we have it on the calendar with tentative location. We planned out not by this fall, we're looking for a different location. 5:30 World Cafe, February 22nd. Perhaps at Mr. Boone's building. We tried to get an elementary site, but I think there's school age care going on, so the time doesn't work out.
It was lovely there.
But we have 5 buildings, one, two. We can check out all the facilities.
Move around, move around.
The other updates in here are program specific, so your department updates are in there. First and one is always the leadership updates, and the second is our program. It's such a nice job of giving updates.
Anything else?
That's all.
Any questions for the superintendent? Call out very well and her report. Consent agenda. Anybody have anything they wish to pull from the consent agenda?
I will make a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented.
Motion by Ms. Tipp, is there a second?
I'll second.
Ms. Bjornstedt, second. Roll call vote. Ms. Bjornstedt,
Aye.
Ms. Ossendorf,
Aye.
Ms. Buck,
Aye.
Ms. Tipp,
Aye.
Ms. Roll,
Aye.
Ms. Schrodenfelder,
Aye.
board votes, and the chair votes aye. Motion carries 7-0. Donations and grants.
We have quite a few, so I will list those out. So first one, the amount of $1,000 for FFA for official jackets from here financial. The second one is actually crisis from our Reach. They donated, as you know, that they are transitioning, they're downsizing, I believe. They donated papers, tools, consumable supplies, storage cartons, furniture, art supplies, all went to Reading High School to adopt a student program at the high school. So they combined the supplies with the adopt a student program. So thank you to our Reach for that. And then in memory of Jude Brace, $25 from Michael and Joella Sutherland. $1,000 from Robotics Club from Barbara Haley, $750 from Robotics Club from Bell Industrial Services, $500 from Robotics Club from Colorado Body Glass, $200 from Robotics Club from Star Tech Computing Inc., $500 from Robotics Club from Reading Chevrolet, and $392 for Reading School District Meal Fund from Reading Burgers LLC and Culvers of Reading. $100 for the Robotics Club from Ryan Mechanical Inc., another $100 for the Robotics Club from Reading Base Hardware, and last but not least, $600 for secondary field trips from Jeff and Kelly Cohen. So thank you for all of these generous donations. Looks like the Robotics Club is pretty set.
Very, very generous. Everybody here has given this year, this meeting and all previous meetings. Is there a motion to approve the resolution? Moved by Ms. Ossendorf. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Ms. Schoenfelder. It's a roll call vote. Ms. Buck?
Aye.
Ms. Tiff?
Aye.
Ms. Rowe?
Aye.
Ms. Ossendorf?
Aye.
Ms. Schoenfelder?
Aye.
Ms. Bjornstedt?
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Thank you very much again for the generous donations. Approve the audit report. Good evening.
Good evening. We are asking for acceptance of the audit report, which you heard from the auditing firm last meeting. We wanted some time for people to absorb the report and ask any questions as needed. So tonight, we're asking that this be the opportunity for the board to accept that audit report for fiscal year 2023.
This was at our last workshop. Talked about.
Yes.
We have 2 weeks. Have any questions for the writer? Hearing none, I'll entertain a motion to approve the audit. Moved by Ms. Rowe, is there a second?
Second.
Second by Ms. Schoenfelder. All right, roll call vote. Ms. Rowe?
Aye.
Ms. Schoenfelder?
Aye.
Ms. Bjornstedt?
Aye.
Ms. Ossendorf?
Aye.
Ms. Tiff?
Aye.
Ms. Buck?
Aye.
And the chair votes aye. Thank you very much. Approval of the final 2024 levy.
At the last meeting, December 4th, there was a truth and taxation hearing in which the details with regard to the levy for pay 2024 were laid out for our community, including the tax impact. Tonight, the request is for the board to certify this levy. Upon doing so, then this information gets reported to the state of Minnesota as well as then the counties within the next week, so that they then have that information available to do the final property tax statements for our taxpayers. During calendar 2024, the proceeds of those taxes for school districts are utilized in our fiscal year 2025 budget as we build that. So that's where those funds will then become part of our revenues. As we worked through this, there was a message from MDE that they had some difficulty with the system where it was off because of some rounding issues. It allows us to go ahead and certify our program, but it did mean that hours changed by a penny. So the information you have in your packet is off by 1 penny. So I would make note of that because what we are needing to certify is the exact dollar amount. And so as it reads on the certification form that was printed off the website, it is $10,819,487.05.
You heard the recommendation. There's a recommendation there, I think. I'll make that recommendation.
I move to certify the 2024 tax levy for Red Range Public Schools in the amount of $10,000,000 $892,487.05, and to direct the Director of Finance and Operations to forward the certification to the county auditor and other entities as required.
By Ms. Armstead, is there a second?
Second.
Second by Ms. Ossendorf. Any discussion? Roll call vote. Ms. Armstead?
Aye.
Ms. Ossendorf?
Aye.
Ms. Still?
Aye.
Ms. Buck?
Aye.
Ms. Roll?
Aye.
Ms. Schoenfelder?
Aye.
And Chair votes aye. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Special Education Audit Report. Superintendent Wade.
So the special education audit report is completed. Some of you have been able to see just the draft final version. Cabinet did review it initially. We have a second meeting with them because they were not able to join us at the first reading, so they're joining us this week to give us some of the input on the process, the law data, and so on. And once that is complete, we will make our final recommendations to the board with next steps based on their recommendations. That's just kind of where we're at right now. They were all sick last week and weren't able to join us, and we have some additional questions. So it's a pretty deep dive into special services, finances, partnership. And so without some of the background knowledge, it's hard for us to understand what the recommendations are. So that's where we're at today, and we have more information. So like the Friday update.
So will there be a report like at the next board meeting that we can talk about stuff?
Any other questions? Okay. Breakfast with the board. We talked about this at the agenda committee.
So this is kind of from the fall. One of the ideas to get all of you into the building was to offer a potential time to have breakfast. The compounding factor to this is that often our teachers and support professionals and our principals are busy in the morning, onboarding and welcoming our wonderful humans into the building, and at the end of the day, there's a limited amount of time. So I'm wondering, and I do have some principals in house today, and thinking about some of our upcoming staff work days, staff development days, way early in the morning, that we have to divide and conquer and bring some type of breakfast, where they can come in house for a certain amount of time, but we still can capitalize on the PD and the work time that they have in buildings. So we do have our calendar, which is to put into the board book upcoming days, and Mr. Bierman and Jen Grove, these are really bad ideas, to say that out loud. I'm thinking about proposing after the break, so the January 15th and January 18th are work days, and it's just work time. Is that a good time for people to come in with a breakfast, with teachers can come in and out and get back to their experiences? So you would have to represent Mr. Fuchs and Mr. Cagle and Brittany as well.
I think it's fine.
I think it's easier than a school day.
Amen.
Okay, so.
Yeah, I think that's good. I think we should have the principals tell us the time that works best for us to come and do this. We don't want to be there all day, just maybe an hour, 45 minutes, whatever. Come and say thank you, just let them know that we.
You could do some letter training.
Are you thinking
You
filet
could do some
mignon
letter,
for breakfast?
Steak and eggs. Steak and
Omelet
eggs.
station.
I'm thinking just bagels with the board, we're all about alliteration.
Grits and what is it? Grits?
Cream cheese.
No, we're just thinking something like, we're talking about bagels, maybe a little coffee or juice or something.
We can discuss this tomorrow during the leaders meeting and get a better handle on it.
Yeah.
I hate to speak for the other buildings because.
Oh, you can, do that here.
That'll teach them.
We have a meeting tomorrow, so we'll be.
We want 2 or 3, to go if they can.
Board members.
Each building, you don't go to every building, but split up the buildings.
So all on one day, but divide the board up amongst the 5
Probably 2 days.
Okay.
15th to 19th, or
Both
because
of those.
the Burnside starts earlier than middle school, like Sunnyside. So whatever, it might have to even go into February too, or other days.
Those are my grandma days, and my husband will leave me. I leave him alone, and especially if there are no school days, then Lemon's there, so then it's 4 kids.
We're in business with kids.
I know, so, you
Ken
know.
can do it. Ken can do it.
Ken, I'll let him know you said that to him.
Yeah.
Listen, all the high school kids will be off, they can babysit.
Then I'd have to clean my house.
All right, well, let's wait to hear back.
So, but I can do Mondays,
Okay.
but not the Fridays, unless it's starting like this term. But we never know that till the last minute.
Okay, public summary of the, let me back up here. Does everybody think it's a good idea on the board? Breakfast with the board?
Yes.
Okay, let's go. Public summary of the superintendent. As a group, we completed the evaluation, the mid-year evaluation prior to our December 4th meeting. And we went into closed session and discussed the evaluation. It's a mid-year one, so it's a kind of abbreviated one. I've come up with a summary based upon our discussion that we had, everybody in the room that day. Is there anybody that likes it, doesn't like it, or okay with it? I think it captured pretty much everything that we discussed.
I thought you did a great job, Jim.
All right, good, I like that. I don't think we need to, make a motion, because it's not, but it's something that will be put in the public file, put in the superintendent's file, personnel file, so. Thank you, everybody, for filling out the evaluation, the comments, and participating in that meeting 2 weeks ago. I think it doesn't go without saying that we're very happy with the direction that Superintendent Wagner's leading the school district, her team, her leadership team, and people that are in place here. Been here 5.5 months, and I walk into the schools, I see a lot of different vibes, I feel a different vibe and hear different things in the schools when I'm in there. I was just the other day out at Burnside, spent some time with Ms. Girl for about an hour. Walk around, see all the nice paintings and the drawings on the walls, and the students, and the room there that made a lot of noise coming out of that somebody just has time to vent, which is good. It's just getting away, and I like that. I really did. I like that time there. So anybody else can get out and do it. I'm gonna go to Mr. Bierman's here and so on. Bagels, been up to the high school, get back down to Brittany's. Everybody else, I'm sure they welcome me to come out there and just notify me ahead of time. Pop in. Kind of fun to see what the kids are doing. So, but anyway, thank you. You're doing a nice job. So the last line in the end, the board is happy with the performance as a superintendent. All right, upcoming meetings and adjournment. We meet again in 2024. The first meeting is Tuesday because the first is a holiday. We'll do a workshop and then we'll have an organizational meeting after that. And keep the agenda, we'll discuss the agenda tomorrow, but we'll probably keep it somewhat light. We'll see what we have. Look for another workshop topic because we'll do the mission statement. We'll probably find another one. If anybody else has anything that's they'd like us to consider, please let us know. So.
And our second meeting in January will likely be a Tuesday as well,
Right.
right? 'Cause
16th,
Yeah.
I think the second meeting in February will be the same too.
President's Day.
So we'll have to look at, one thing to think in the organization is when we want to meet.
Yeah, we can keep meeting the first and thirds.
Okay.
Maybe we won't meet the first and third anymore.
No,
At least it does have a draft.
pretty much stay down to first and third for some time now, so whatever any of the board wants to do. So, anybody else have anything? I want to wish everybody a happy holidays, happy New Year, all that. That's around the corner here. It can't come whether we're ready or not. The holidays. So, with that, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn to the last meeting of 2023.
So moved.
Moved by Ms. Schoenfeld, is there a second?
Second.
Second by Ms. Bjornstad. Do a roll call vote. Again, happy holidays. Happy New Year. So, Ms. Buck,
Aye.
Ms. Bjornstad,
Aye.
Ms. Rowe, Ms. Tiff,
Aye.
Ms. Schoenfeld,
Aye.
Ms. Ossendorf,
Aye.
and Chair votes aye. Yes. Thank you very much. We're adjourned.
Excellent.
That's kind of neat.
Yeah. We gotta slam that thing down.